So, as Matt said, I'm Ryan, I'm part of GWB, but I'm here to talk to you about 3D stuff. So, for the last 10 years I've been working in 3D. Started off making flight simulators and then moved into like an urban planning aspect of it. So a lot of the stuff that I'll talk to today is actually work that I've done, different things that I've done in the industry, and how different cities are integrating it. So without further ado, I'll jump into it. I walk around a lot. If you guys want to interact with me, I would love that too. People who are in my remote sensing class, they know that. So we're going to start. What is 3D? What is it? It's really just this. It's things that have multiple dimensions in the X, the Y, and the Z. So, you know, we kind of might think of it this way. It's movies, right? Different characters. Some video games. Anyone play video games? Anyone? Yeah? Anyone ever watch a TV show that had third dimension in it? Yeah? Go to a movie and you put those cool glasses on? So for a lot of people, that's what we think 3D is. It's kind of in that era. We have TVs now that broadcast it. Google's making a phone that shoots 3D video and records cameras and pictures and stuff like that. 3D printers, anyone heard of that before? Yeah? So like this is kind of the era, like we are living in the era of 3D, and while this is all great and it's pushing the technology, it's not what I'm going to talk about. So just to set the stage, we're going to talk about stuff in the geospatial world because planning has geospatial aspects to it. It's in the real world, it has rules, it has things. But generally people think about data or analysis when they think about 3D. So some of the data may be orthorectification, it might be digital elevation models, right? So because we're in the world, we need to stand on stuff. So everything is based off of this DEM. This is Hamilton. I don't know if you can see in here, that's the river valley up in the mountain. This is where everything is based off of, and it gives us that third dimension because each pixel is represented in the Z. So it gives us above. This is a LiDAR type of data set, which is even more enhanced. And you can see some of the houses and the blocks of trees. So a lot of this is different types of data. You can even see the waves in the water. So it's a really dense thing. So people are like, oh, I do 3D, I do LiDAR. Or I make ortho images, which is all based on the third dimension, making the pixels know exactly where they are, gives it that relief, that accuracy. Or maybe I build stuff like this. Any idea? Thoughts what these are? Those of you who went to class would know this answer. These are 3D buildings. And Matt, do you recognize this?
Yeah, Lakehead University.
Yeah, so this is a university. This is where Matt and I did our undergrad and our master's together. So this is kind of where we're going to go. We're going to start talking about it, but analysis is a huge part of it. So we're going to do things, and everyone wants to see 3D really pretty, right? Like it's a pretty picture, like that's all people think that it really is. But it allows us to do different types of analysis, and that's where planners are doing it. Because there's just certain things you can't plan for in the second dimension. So cities are really rolling into this third dimensional analysis, and that's what we're going to talk into. So this is a line of sight, so we'll get into that. So if I want to see something, if I'm standing up top and I want to see if I can see something on the bottom, I need that third dimension to figure that out. I can't see Matt's foot on the ground because there's something in front of me, right? That's the concept. I can't see everyone's feet here because there's chairs blocking it. Another aspect is just more picture, bigger picture is the view shed. Like what can I see around me? I can't see behind me, obviously. I can't see a lot of different features. So these are kind of the principles that we're going to talk about today that is really pushing what different cities want to do in their planning applications. So this is what we'll be talking about. Things like this. Full-blown cities that have features in it. So these buildings, they have imagery underneath and terrain. This is a college in Colorado Springs, and a lot of universities are really asking for this type of work, for recruitment aspects. You know, international students are coming from across the globe now, and it's really expensive. Anyone think that tuition's expensive? Yeah, I think it's pretty expensive too. So if I'm going to spend my money and I can go to any school in the world, I'm going to look at stuff, and maybe this is a helpful recruitment strategy. So they can tour their campus before they even leave. Parents kind of get a little worried when their little boys and girls go off and they want to make sure that they're safe and they're going to have types of stuff. But we as a generation, more specifically you as a generation, are demanding this types of stuff with the games that you play, with the videos and the movies and things that you watch. you're growing up in this era of data and expectations that we didn't have. Like I played Super Mario Brothers and that was awesome at 8 bits, you know, but now it's like this 3D stuff is just the expectation. It's really pushing how we're looking at doing things in the future, and it's because of the expectations that you guys have. This is in Qatar. So I was working on a project for Qatar, and it's the petroleum company, and they're modeling their entire facilities, and it's across the country of Qatar. But they wanted to have these high-level, detailed types of models. And they want to do it for lots of different planning, but also kind of a, you know, money gathering. So if you look good, people are more readily available to invest into you. But they want to have things for disaster management. Like this is obviously a mosque, which is extremely important to them in that facility. So if we're going to have new people coming in, this is the kind of the area that you have. This is their main office building, and they do further planning. I'll get into some of that, but like this is the kind of the stuff that I'm talking about. High levels of details, fully textured. So this is a building in New Hampshire. New Hampshire wanted to build their downtown area for economic development. So if a company wants to come in, I want to build a plant, I want to give thousands of jobs away to be the saver for the town, what cities are now starting to realize is, well, let's build it so you can see the future of what's here, and if this is your location, and here's the plant that you can build, and a lot of different attractions rather than hand-drawn sketches or going around with a video camera that shakes, and like it's actually cheaper to have them interact in the real dimension. But they want detail. Like, can anyone see what that is? Guesses? The hand railings. Like, to the nth detail. Windows that are inset. And this we'll get into, keep that in mind when we get into some of the scenarios that I'll talk to you about. Okay, so we want that type of detail for certain applications. But that's not good enough. They want to make it look pretty. Right? So what can we use 3D for? Obviously we can read the slide list and things like that, but there's actually quite a few applications. There's lots of applications, but what we were finding, and I was finding when I was working is, security is absolutely the biggest one. We live in a world where people are doing a lot of things and there's stuff going on, so they want to be able to security management stuff. They want to run these scenarios. And I'm going to talk to you about a few of these scenarios that we were involved with. But what they want to be able to do is build their entire city and then see what happens. What ifs statements. They're doing a lot of what if kind of clauses. Okay? Also, so for disasters. Anyone hear of Katrina about 9 years ago, right? Yeah. So, classic thing is water went there, right? Draw that out, but what's the impact? Insurance, right? All the water goes in the couple first floors, the second floor. Who's that impacting? How do we get people out of the city now if it's underwater? Where do our roads go? What's potentially going to get washed away? So the disaster management and security is really pushing the forefront at the beginning. But now we're starting to see a lot of development firms. And I put Renaissance downtown as a company, and I want to talk about them for a little bit, because what they're doing is really cool. So they're a company out of New York. We were flown in to do consulting with them to kind of like do a bunch of 3D thoughts, kind of a roundhouse. And they don't want to be a traditional development firm any longer, right? They make billions of dollars. So that's awesome, good for them. But that's not good enough to them. The CEO is more interested in being socially and environmentally engaged and doing things the right way rather than just as a profit-driven aspect. So what does that mean for 3D? Well, he deals with a lot of redevelopment of towns that are, trying to change over from industry into more hip and new ways and bring stuff in, kind of like what the discussion around James Street North is, right? Revitalizing. What he's found over the decades of doing this is by just going in and developing it, not everyone's happy. Doesn't work. People get kind of ticked off. They don't like the outcome. They're worried about, well, you're going to ruin my business, or how do I get around? So what he wants to do is, and what he is doing, is he's building a 3D application so they can plan it, and they can go to the town halls, they'll pull it up, do what we're doing here, and be like, okay, this building's going to go in here, and this is what it's going to look like. And we're going to change some of the factors of that building. What if we make it 5 stories tall? And then it automatically generates the tax revenue for them. How much taxes changes if you have more occupants? but also how much more water do they need, how much more electricity, how much carbon footprint does that create. So they're doing all these social and environmental factors built into 3D to mitigate a lot of the back and forth issues that they've experienced through community engagement. And they're putting this in practice in a few places right now in New York and Connecticut. And what they found is by doing it along this way, they get over 85% acceptance from people first time. People are really, really like engaged, like, oh my God, I can totally see that. Yeah, what if we put a coffee shop here? What if we did this? What if we did that? And everyone's really happy and they move forward and the development happens quicker. And what's the bottom line? They make better profit than spending time wasting back and forth. And it's not a waste, but like back and forth with community involvement. So 3D has been a really, really big tool for them. A lot of things that we're finding as well is like just development, like all that stuff that we're talking about, future developments and how to get stuff done. One of the new parts, and it's exciting, and for those who are here, you heard Ed talk about it a little bit, is interior mapping. So going indoors. We live indoors. It's got a lot of rules, it's got a lot of different things about it, and how does that impact, and how do we use that, and what does that mean going forward? And it's a really, really thriving big business, and the business isn't only just at the end applications, but also collecting that data. How do we get it? How do we get all this stuff? What's important? What's not important? And what's driving it is really hotels and insurance. They're really driving this industry. So if I were to go travel to San Francisco for a conference, and I was a big-time businessman, or maybe I was just going to see my favorite football team, and I want to know my hotel. I might want to know, what can I see out my window? If I'm going to pay $200 a night, I better have a good view. So we see a lot of this going through like different types of applications around hotel and tourism. Property management is massive right now for interior. So if I own a lot of companies and they're at different places around the world, I want to know what I own, how much area, who's in it, if I'm a leaser, all sorts of different things. So it's really, really driving these forces. And I'm going to try to touch on all that tonight. And if you guys have questions, please speak up during, because you don't have to wait till the end. Like I like engagement. So with that, we're going to be jumping in and out. And I thought a really good way to start is, rather than taking my word for it, let's read some RFPs. We're not going to read hundreds and hundreds of pages, but I just want to show you that certain cities are definitely involved and interested in all from kind of a planning applications package. So this is in Alabama. Can everyone see this? Should I zoom in a bit? No is yes, or no, or silence is yes. So we'll just go to their first statement. Planning. Everything they want to do is planning. And it's for all those things that I was talking about. Whoops. Right, so qualified personnel, yeah, that's nice. They want for development of urban design, future land use and transportation. So they think that spending, a project like this would definitely be probably $5 to $10 million to do something like this. They think that's worth it for future development for all these other reasons, right? They can see what's going to happen. What if we put in a new highway through here? What's that impact? Sure, we could draw it on paper and we could do it in a 2D sense, but there's so many other things that go into that, right? One close to home, City of Vaughan. Come on. So they want to do a similar thing, but a lot of it has to do for, right here, green directives. So they're worried about environmental planning. And they feel that by building it in 3D, that they'll be able to start planning in for environmental catastrophes and different kind of changes along those lines. Okay, so we won't go through all of them or anything like that, but I just want to show you that this is happening. And North America is the slowest. This is huge in Asia. China has a $500 million budget to build all their cities in 3D. And that work has to get done by somebody and some people. the Middle East is doing, like, all their cities are done. There's an RFP out just to do the country of Bahrain, and it happens every couple of years that these big projects is. And then they're gonna feed into North America and we have to catch up, so it's really a thriving and starting industry. Of course, this doesn't work. So I'm gonna show you a little video that I made. It's goes real fast. And it's kind of what's involved with building these buildings. You don't just go to the shop and buy them because people want their stuff. And it all comes from bringing in real data. Okay, so by having real data, we can build their actual buildings. And that's what people want. There's lots of different levels of buildings. There's some that they're fine with just having like a gray, hold up thing, just like you see there. That could be good enough for their analysis. But what we find is the majority of people are like, well, that's good, but I like things to look nice. So by bringing in this data, it allows us to build realism. And by having the realism, it allows us to ask more questions. Right? So without asking questions, it's kind of useless. So these are all photographs that were taken, and this is a university that I was at, so it was really easy to kind of do it. And the images allow us to build features like windows. Why would windows be important? Well, in the world of security, people stand behind windows. So that could be who could see me, who could shoot out. In the sense of the environment, well, solar. What's the solar potential? Right? What's my heating cost going to go up if I have too many windows? So these are all things that we do. We build these buildings, and I'm just going to kind of get through it a little bit more towards the end. So you start seeing a realistic view. And this realistic view is what people pay to have and what they're expecting. Okay. I'll just be quiet for a second while it's done. So they want to see things along these lines. So I'm going to get into some different scenarios, and I want to talk to you about scenarios, and this is kind of where it all happens. So security management, believe it or not, the big brother aspect, I don't know if it's true or not, but people are definitely worried about it. When I was working in Colorado, we were asked to build the city of Denver and the city of St. Louis for the FBI. And this was back in 2008 when President-elect Obama was doing his Democratic speeches. He was going to these cities. So why would they want it in 3D? Well, believe it or not everybody was pleased with President-elect Obama and didn't want him to be part of the union. So they were worried about terrorist activities or shootings or different aspects. So what we were building was the entire city down to the manholes and the different lights and the trees and all these features so that they could scenario plan it. Here's his motorcade route that would come through. And they wanted to know if this is where the podium is that he's going to speak outside, who potentially could see him and use a high-powered rifle to take him down. So that was worth, obviously, for them to invest and purchase and buy because of the impact of it. Did anything happen? Well, no, we know that it didn't happen, but that's how people start to do a lot of these missions, is they'll plan for that ahead of time so they're prepared. So I'm going to show you some stuff from our company that we had just online so you can see it in action. And I'll walk you through it when it loads. So this is in the city of Denver, and what they're doing is they're wanted to know where they could put different CCTV cameras, right? So we've all heard of the big brother aspect of CCTV cameras and stuff. But you're not just going to go put them out anywhere without getting your best bang for your buck. So knowing this, what we can do is we can find out its view shed. What can it see? What can't it see? We know its angle of view. We know roughly how far that they can see without starting to lose degradation. So we can model this and then now interact with it. And this is what a lot of command station centers have built into their city for planning. So the city of Dubai was one of the first that I'm aware of that has done this. And they've integrated this for their entire city So they can track, keep track and communicate, but keep track with police officers, the military, and then also first responders. And it's real-time tracking that's going on, so I know where my car is, they do their incident reports, and they're building, and everything's in the third dimension. They have a lot of money, right? Dubai is a fairly expensive place. But they want this for, you know, to see everything. If I just had extruded buildings, well, I wouldn't know a lot of the different applications that I could do for emergency response. So this one here kind of fits with what I was talking about. So this is in St. Louis. And all these moving parts are cars or people. So we can set the scenario to figure out where people are at, who might be on patrol. But you can also integrate this real time to have GPS feeds going into your planning application so you know really what's happening. And what they're worried about is all around here. So crowd control, bombing, mitigation, if there was any kind of catastrophe, where do people come up the doors, how do we move people around the city. But you can see this one, if you can't read it, but that's a robber right there. So they did a scenario, they want to know if someone was taking off, where everything would be, where they could hide, who needs to be in what spot. And everything is integrated with cameras so they can switch over to say, well, we see the person's running down Main Street, let's go to the Main Street feed and take a look and see if we're seeing them. And in real time, the person would run by these cameras. So you can see the car driving there. So these are applications that are sitting in like a command center for certain cities around the world. They want this. They want to be able to plan for it. When you host in the Olympics, you're planning ahead of time. How many years? 8 years ahead. And the London Olympics built this. This is what they wanted. They had this built so they could plan for lots of different scenarios, not just security applications, but really highly secure types of features. Okay? I'm just going to show you one more. So this is kind of the scenario aspect that I was talking to you about for the President-elect Obama. So this is Denver again. We were in Colorado, so it's easy to build Denver. But that's the state government building. So where the state governor lives or works in this constituents. What's being built in there, that's called a threat dome. So they want to know like anything that would be inside of that area. So that could be evacuation purposes, that could be noise complaints, right? So this is an airport, the noise goes up this far, that would be the dome of area of impact. So just think of it as an impact area. But around it, what you build are these different types of perimeter fences. So in the security application, you had that perimeter fence, so anyone who would go through it would trip it and it would sound an alert. So the person planning would see the alert and be like, well, someone's walked in here, and then all the cameras would come up. The powerful part about where 3D is taking us now is the integration with data. So these are all 2D stuff. We're used to seeing that when we do any type of GIS mapping or, you know, Google Maps, get me here, get me there. But the integration with further data and attributes is what cities want. They don't want pretty pictures anymore. Pretty pictures were cool 10, 12, 15 years ago, but I want to use pretty pictures to answer questions. So each one of these buildings are objects. Remember, you saw that really fast video where we were making a building. These are linked to databases that would have objects and have attribute information. So who owns it? How many people can work in here? How many floors does it have? What type of materials are it made out of? What's its tax rate? And they use this for all sorts of different planning applications, not just security. And that's where people are really starting to drive into now. It's like, okay, great, I have this, but how do I make it generate revenue? And that's where things are working into, like tying into the tax assessments. So we'll go now and we'll kind of jump a little further. So I'm going to show you some interactive things. So this one here is a viewshed assessment on the fly. The software's getting so fast now that you can draw and it'll show you on the fly what you can and can't see. These cars are driving by, so if there's on the fly what you could and could not see. And that's important for different applications of many things. If I'm going to build something and I have a statue or something along those lines, I need to know what I'm going to do. So I'm from Nova Scotia. Halifax is the capital, so I lived in Halifax. And they have an old bylaw. I think it's 200 or 300 years old. Oh, is it that long? Where are you, Justin? It's not here. I think it's about 200 or 300 years old. From the top of the city, there's a hill, and it's called Citadel Hill, and there's an old fort. The bylaw states that you need to be able to see all the islands in the harbor. So that's changed the planning, right? You can't just build any skyscraper wherever you want. And it can't be certain shapes, because depending on where you're at, you need to be able to see these islands. And that's changed how planning works in that city. There's a Barrington Tower. It's a weird shape when you look at it. It has this weird kind of angles. And it's because at certain spots on top of the hill, you have to be able to see the island, so they have to cut off corner. So that's how they built it. So these types of applications of real time and view sheds is important to them, because if someone's going to develop a new building and a skyscraper, well, let's build it ahead of time and see if you can see it. So that's where cities are starting to use a lot of that. Here's one that I'm really interested in, because I'm kind of a dork about renewable energy. But this is what cities are doing. So Washington, D.C. wanted this, and this is just a video of how people are using 3D to calculate sun and potential energy. So this is actually Perth, and all these colors represent how many kilowatts of energy per hour you have for potential. We couldn't do this in 2D. It just wouldn't be possible. And while things are happening in different cities, they're getting to the right of sun, the right of energy. So if I'm going to live in that condo, I have the right on my balcony to have a solar panel. Or cities now with solar panels becoming transparent and being able to be integrated with windows, that could be their energy potential. So I need to know that, because if you're going to put up a massive CN tower, you might block everything and put me in a huge shadow. And now I don't have the right to that sun. Or if maybe our city wants to go green and reduce the amount of concrete and put in gardens and put in trees, well, where would they live? Like, where could they get enough of that sunlight? So people are really, these are real applications that people are considering, because the future cities of tomorrow aren't the cities of today. And we need to answer those questions, and it's kind of expensive to build a city to find out that it fails. So getting into this revitalization and development, I'm going to show you just on the fly something. And I'm going to show you a scenario in Hamilton that I made up. Does anyone know where this is? I'm going to move this down a bit. This is McMaster's Innovation Park area. Okay, so currently there is a building there, but let's say we were a few years ago and we wanted to rebuild this. We wanted to see what it was going to be like. We can start dropping in things and start building it in 3D with maybe a condo. What's the impact of that condo now on the neighboring area? Does it fit in? Vancouver will not allow certain companies to be built there. Walmart doesn't exist inside of Vancouver. The city of Whistler, or the town of Whistler and Banff have look and feel construction bylaws. So you have to fit into the mountain look of those towns. Different cities implement that type of application. Washington, D.C. has a 4-story limit in their bylaw and zoning codes. So we want to build this ahead of time to be like, well, you know what? That doesn't fit with the look of how we want it to go. And we're trying to get away from high density types of zoning. So let's maybe look at something different. What about this? How does that fit in now? What's the impact going to be on having that many different places? Do we need to have a bigger parking lot for them? How are they going to get out onto Longwood? Well, how does that impact Aberdeen? All these different types of scenarios that we could build and try to figure out. How much more power needs to go in there? Do we even have a network that could support that many people requesting power on the grid? And then even more, what about small development? Come on. You don't want to go on the cliff. There. So these are little townhouses, and they're just really heavy for my computer to zoom in on. So we may propose, yeah, let's build these. Let's build some nice row houses and get it kind of chic, and that's awesome. But does anyone want to live across from the auto park? No? Right? Does anyone want to have that in their backyard? The zombie factory? Right? So by putting this in here, we can do these kind of like community involvements, engagements, run through stuff. And some of them are like, I'll totally buy one. I don't care about the auto park. That's awesome because they have a really good kind of like Christmas show every year, and I go over and I do some fun stuff. But you got to get rid of the zombie factory because it's not cool. Got to get rid of it. So then now we look at it like, oh, okay, well, we can go through all these different types of planning scenarios of how it needs to work. Let's start building it and put more trees in it. I need a park for my kids. Like all sorts of different types of scenarios can happen. This is a product that we built, and it has to do with property management. So I'm just going to run this video. It's more of a how-to, but you'll see some stuff happening. So what? Who likes that? So this is a building that we just built. Do you recognize that? Which building that is? RC, the geography building at our school. So I used it because they had available floor plans. But this is what people want. They want to be able to know what's in their building and who's there, and they want to be able to interact rather than just flipping through types of blueprints and looking through a phone directory and walking around with all this type of stuff. So they want these applications that can be easily accessible, and they want to be able to move it. So this is where people want to be, how they want to go. They want to be able to interact with their data in real time in the third dimension, because that's how I live. I live in the third dimension. I'm not The Simpsons. I'm not Nintendo 2000, like a long time ago. So all these different places have attributes associated to them. So you can see their color coding, so I know the general makeup of my building. So this gets into rent. So people want to look at that. So at this, if we use this as the campus example, who has the most area? What department has the most space? How many students do they have? How much revenue are they generating off of these students in the school sense? But in an office particular environment, it'd be like, okay, who's renting from me? Is it a business? When's their lease up? What kind of tax rates are they implemented on them? So they want to know that, and they want to have it right there at real time. And sure, you could do it inside of a 2D sense, but it's a lot more difficult. So I'll go through that. I'm going to show you another video on interior mapping, and this is kind of where things are going. And if you were in the 3D research center, that's what they're doing now. They're using quadcopters and robots to go out and collect all the data. You know, people sometimes have backpacks and they're collecting things, or they're automated. And we built a robot, and as funny as it is, it's not like a robot, it's actually a Roomba that has a system on it that collects stuff using LiDAR. So I'm going to show you some of the data that it comes from. This is going to be from Colorado Springs in a really big hotel where there was a conference. And a friend of mine who runs that part of the project went and collected a really, really detailed area. So this is a fountain in the middle. And these are columns, but you can see all this information. You can actually, you'll see a person here on his phone. So there's the fountain. There's a person on his phone. So this was taken automatically. And that's where people are going. They want to get that data, but then they want to use this. They want to use this for features and to be able to navigate and be able to, there's door handles. Right? So this is where we're going, big data. Well, this is big GIS data or big information. And now all those points need to be associated to information. And that's what people want to do with their interior stuff. So, has anyone lived on campus here? Yeah, you lived on campus. So you're from away. Is it kind of scary, wondering what my room's going to be like, kind of thing? What am I going to see? A lot of universities now are interested in putting that in for recruitment strategies. So here's my room assignment. Here's my little room. This is what it looks like. Here's what you see outside. But then they want to integrate that into the entire campus. Here's my schedule. Here's how I get to that office. Here's how I find my professor. And they do this interior navigating because it's great. You get somebody there, but then how do we get them? Remember Steve Buckley, right? We had to go out in the parking lot and wave them down, because how do you tell them to get to this room? Hey, come downstairs. There's half stairs that you turn left at, and then if you go too far, you use this, it's really difficult. And at a university, you get a couple people a day, I think, coming on campus who don't know anything about this school. I know I didn't know how to get here when I first started. So people want that navigational properties and usage, but not just get me to the campus, it's get me to the room. How do I get there? How do I find my way around? This is a big campus, right? It's not even a big campus for Canada, this is a big campus. Where's HR at for me? How do I go there? Where do I go to the library? How do I find things? And this is what people want. And then they want to use information about it. And all that's tagged into a planning application. So this is the San Diego Padres dugout. The locker room. And this is a final product that we made for them for a demo. Collected from that LiDAR that you saw. So our little robot went in there and it was beep boop, doing all this stuff, collecting points. And that data was brought back and it was turned into this. And the Padres are just a team. They're not even the biggest team. So people are really going after this type of stuff. Come on. This was my office area. So we lived in cube hell. We did, unfortunately. But this is all built from a blueprint. And this is everything. The the monitors, the chairs, the desks. And the reason we wanted this was to do IT allocation. So our IT department wanted to be able to plan, where do we put people, right? So who sits in this group? Is it the 3D modeling group that sits here? Is this the accountants who sit here? Who's in these areas? Then also, how many ports do they have? Do they have enough energy that's going in here? Can everyone plug in? Do we need to reroute some fiber optic internet to them through these posts? So people are using this for all sorts of different planning applications. It's not just your traditional urban planning and routing. Like IT wants to do this. There's a company that approached us, a water company in DC, who wants their entire facility plant to be done in 3D, inside, to the pipe, and the wheel. Everything. And they want it for a couple different applications. They want it so that if there was ever a catastrophe, like a water breakage, like a pipe exploded, okay, where did it happen? What do we need to shut off to turn it down? What just got destroyed by water? So on and so forth. Also, when it's time to replace a light switch, they want to know which light switch it was. What model number is it? How many do I need? How many watts of circuit? Everything. So it's down to these little tiny bits of information that people are interested in for interior modeling. And it's really going to drive how things are done going forward. So just a few more shots of my work, my old work. So I'm going to end on a couple simulations. And I'm going to show you some stuff live. So cross your fingers that this works. We'll go here. This is something that we built to show off some capabilities of interior and exterior 3D. I'll let it adjust. So this was my build. And I'm going to be moving around here. So one thing that we did, so it's a nice pretty picture, thanks, that's really good, Ryan, pretty pictures. But attribution for the planning aspect. That's its location, that's its address. What about some other places? So this is where cities are getting into. They want this type of information. Right? This is a church. So we have that all currently already. Let me try to navigate some more. Other cars, real time happening, right? So we can have that. But the part that where people are wanting now is more interaction. So what happens when the wind's blowing? Or it starts to rain? Or it gets darker? And now, for a safety aspect, anyone ever walked home late at night and was kind of scared? It's kind of like been in some bad areas, right? So it's much brighter on mine, sorry for the screen, but there are definitely dark zones, right? Like those lights don't really give us a lot of coverage. So people want to scenario plan and they want to build their stuff, but they want to show off a little bit as well. But the application can be both together, inside and outside. So here is, guess where, our turnover work. And here's our blueprint. And we're going to walk through parts of the old office that I worked in. Right? And because it's 3D, we can look around, but everything, inside and out. People want to be able to see things. Hotels are asking for this now so that people can find out what their room is going to look like. They want to view it. So if I'm going to fly to Hawaii, and I'm going to take my wife there and we're going to have an awesome time, and I'm going to break the bank, I want to know what it's going to look like. Right? No more just Expedia 5 stars. Because your idea of 5-star might not be my idea of 5-star. People want to know what's around them when they buy $1 million condo. Right? Really expensive. what do I see? Am I going to have the sun baking in my face for 12 hours a day? Am I going to hate where my condo is? Do I look out and see garbage? What is in my view? If I'm willing to drop $1 million, that better be $1 million view. That's the expectation that people have. I'm going to finish on one that I can't get out of. There. I'm going to finish on Lake Superior National Marine Conservation. Has anyone ever heard of this park? Yeah. You're not allowed to know, but you already know about it. So it's the world's largest national marine conservation area, and it's on the north shore of Lake Superior. So it runs about 10,000 square kilometers, all fresh water, lots of islands. Really, really pretty. If you ever get a chance to go up there, it's beautiful. So they're just building this park, and it's about to get established formally, I think, in a year or two. But there's this one island up there that's really cool, one of many, but it's called the Slate Islands. And meteorite, right? Hit it, recreated, I think, something like that. So a massive meteorite, I think, hit, from what I remember, hit it, create this big upheaval of island, and there's a subspecies of woodland caribou that live on it. So it's really, really pristine, it's beautiful, and it's almost impossible to get to. It's really, really hard to get to. It's like 10 kilometers from the shore. It's about a $300 boat ride to get there. There's an old town that was like a little villagey area that was there with a lighthouse, because really big shipping, obviously, to go across Lake Superior. So I have all these great, wonderful things, but I can't get to it, and I'm not about to spend $300 to go see an island. So what the park wanted is they wanted to build a virtual experience. They wanted people to be able to go see it and experience it without paying $300 to go there. And also they don't want to have too many people there because of the woodland caribou. They're a very, very sensitive population. There's maybe 100. So any interaction and disruption to that species may cause extinction. So there's this kind of balance. So what we did is we built that. We built the island. And we put it in a tourism center so people can interact with it. So let's interact with it. So this is it. It's just a little back history that we made. So in 3D, you build it. So you might be like, why are you showing me a tourism application? The reason why I want to show you this tourism application is it's behavioral. Now we can find out how people do things, what they do. Can you guys hear this? The birds? Yes. Oh, I just go. Can you hear the walking? So, the purpose of this is our beautiful caribou, because it's the figure species of the island. So the purpose, what they had is they have a series of questions. There's about 10 questions that to engage, to interact. And they go around and they go up to the caribou, and gives you an answer up to the very top. So they're getting virtual interpretation. They can fill out this form, submit it, and win prizes, right? So that's the whole kind of thing. We did a pre-test, and now it was integrated this past summer. And I did a pre-test at a town kind of public engagement meeting or center. There's lots of stuff going on, a little carnival. And people from age of 5 to 80 used it. So now it's a broader span of people who are interacting with it. 80-year-olds are using it and not having problems with it. Average time people spent, 12 to 20 minutes. How long do people read signs? Anyone ever read a sign at a park? How long do you think you stick around that sign? 30 seconds? Minute, maybe? Do you remember any of the stuff on that sign? So this is what they were trying to get at, but it gets a lot into the behavior. So if we were to build this for a planning purpose and we put it out there, we can obviously track what's going on and figure out what people are doing, where they're going, if they jump off of cliffs. Right? So I'm going to take you down a little bit, different spots, just so you can see and that I can run through trees. But the different aspects and things that you can put into 3D now, things are growing so much. And they're evolving at a rapid pace that it really allows us to plan in a different way. Right? So, can you hear water now? Well, that's a function, right? I can't hear lake movement further away. And that's our caribou's bum. But I also can't walk through buildings. So your level of realism can go up. And my favorite part is always this one, the flock of birds flying around. So you can put in all these interactions and these different features, and this is getting loud. So let's go away from the water. There, it's a bit quieter. So from a planning standpoint, and here's where I'm going to kind of end it, is going back to development, but bringing into this behavioral aspect. So, bike lanes. We've heard it a couple times, right? This semester from people. People are putting in bike lanes. People use them? Anyone use a bike lane? Yeah? Anyone scared to drive on the road in Hamilton? I'm totally terrified to ride on some of the roads in here. So, we could build a simulation, an environment of different types of bike lanes. Different types of bike lanes, right? Are they just painted on the ground? Do they have dividers? Are they a complete street model? And then have people bike around it and watch their interaction and record their level of frustration or emotions to understand the behavioral development differences. Do people prefer to have just paint it? Do they prefer to have them separated without putting them in any harm's way? So this is what I mean on the behavioral aspect is by putting people in a scenario that's safe but that simulates reality, we can get a bit more of a true sense of what's happening and potentially what would happen or will happen. So with that, I'm just going to leave it with you and open it for questions.